Stan Ridgeway, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great. How are you, Matt?
I'm doing well. It was almost exactly 3 years since you were in this studio because I believe it was October of 23 was the last time you and I saw each other. You were running for the mayor of Eagle. We were still in the big white armchairs, right, where we like slouch back. And you were also going through the problem with the Eagle Seniors Association that, I invited you on because you've had some degree of resolution with this.
That's correct.
So give us a little background. Tell us where we are.
Okay. We, of course, we were evicted. We've talked about that. It's been in the news. We were evicted officially in 2022. On Thanksgiving Day, the City Council of Eagle voted to evict the senior citizens from the building that they raised money to build back in the late 70s and early 80s. So since that time, we were evicted. Then the city sued the seniors for $150,000, claiming fraud, that we had misled them with our finances. So we, as the seniors, and they also said things about us like they're insolvent, they don't have any money. And at that particular time, we had $70,000 in certificates of deposit and about $30,000 in savings. So they kept coming up with all these things about us and making us look bad that weren't true. So we decided as a senior citizens organization to defend ourselves. And while we didn't have quite enough money to pay off a $150,000 lawsuit, we did decide that we would defend ourselves because we'd rather defend ourselves spending the money we have rather than just giving it to the city. So we did, and it drug out. We had a court date about a year ago, and we decided with the attorneys that we would try a mediation. So we went through mediation, and we offered some compromises to the city representatives there, and they wouldn't accept any of those. So the mediation didn't do anything except delay the court case another 2 or 3 months. Then on top of that, the city attorney went to the judge and tried to get the judge to delay it past November of this year, which would be past the election. And he had told the judge that our attorney had agreed to that, and our attorney was going to be on his honeymoon during that time. So he said no way. So the judge kept the hearing last month when it actually happened.
Okay, and again, they sued you for $150,000,
right?
Saying that you had alleging that the senior association had essentially defrauded or lied to the city and enticed the city into providing some kind of financial backing under false premises or something of that nature.
That's correct.
And it goes on for several years. And then there was also another lawsuit that am I correct in saying that you sued them for evicting you or wrongful, or am I getting, there were a lot of lawsuits in Eagle at this time. So like my apologies. And I know there was problems with people changing locks in the senior center physical building, setting up cameras, rights of privacy. But there was also the defending lawsuit where you guys were defending yourself against saying that we hadn't defrauded the city. Right.
Right. So there are a lot of things happened during that time. Like I was asked by Meals on Wheels that was providing dinners for us to meet at their place with the Parks and Rec director from the city to talk about going forward and maybe working together. So when I showed up at that meeting, there was no Parks and Rec director. It was the city attorney. And the city attorney at that time knew that we had an attorney, so he was breaking their
because he's not supposed to meet with you in private without your attorney.
That's correct. But I met with him, and when I knew that he was coming, I took out my cell phone and I turned on the recorder and I recorded the entire conversation. So, and I gave him a copy of it, and I gave Meals on Wheels director a copy of that. So when I got out of that meeting, I did two things. I called the senior center to tell Tammy, the office manager what had happened, and she said, the city's here changing the locks on the building. So they changed the locks and locked us out of the building that we still had a lease agreement on and an eviction date. Then I called our attorney and told him what the city attorney had done. And now in hindsight, we think that they set up that meeting just so I wouldn't be around when they changed the locks. I also was out of town when they evicted us. I was on a vacation. But anyway, all of those things happened. So what we did as a senior citizens, we countersued the city because they locked us out of our building. They violated our constitutional rights. They filmed us. There's just so many things that they did. And eventually, with a court hearing, the judge ruled that the city had no right to go after the $150,000 that they had sued us for, because the judge said in the agreement that the city asked for a balance sheet or financial information and a balance sheet, and that's what the seniors gave them. Then after it was all said and done, they said we didn't tell them about our savings, what we had in the bank, in CDs and savings accounts. And the judge came back and said, the seniors gave you guys what you wanted, but you weren't sophisticated enough to know what you were asking for. So you asked for the wrong thing. You
got what you asked for.
You got what you asked for. So he threw that. He dismissed the $150,000 lawsuit. And last week at the town hall meeting, when Mayor Pike was asked what happened with the case, he brushed it off real fast and said, well, the city owes the seniors $2,000 and the former mayor owes them $5,000. He didn't mention that the $150,000 was ruled in our favor.
Okay. May I ask a question? Okay. So
sure.
You guys are defendants in the $150,000.
Right.
Right. They say you owe us and you say we don't. And the judge ruled in your favor.
Right.
That's one lawsuit. The countersuit that comes from you, where you're the plaintiff and the city of Eagles, the defendant, comes from you saying, hey, you guys violated our right to privacy. You guys violated a bunch of different things. We have a lease. There was not good behavior. And the judge also ruled in your favor in that, correct?
The jury, there was a 12-person jury, and it was not every count was unanimous, but the ones that ruled against the former mayor were unanimous. And the interesting thing that no one has talked about is that he violated our constitutional rights, and there's a state law that he also violated. And the state law says that it's possibly punishable up to 5 years in prison and a $5,000 fine. So now that the city's appealing, we will probably go after prosecution for the former mayor, who obviously broke the law, and a jury of his own peers decided that.
Okay, so the 150 you guys win, and then the countersuit you guys win. The city is appealing both or just one?
Just the $150,000 suit. I don't think they can appeal
the jury
trial. Maybe they can. I don't know. I'm not an attorney. I'm just sitting in the audience. But part of the speculation is they're doing that because our contract with the city, which the judge read and ruled on in a couple of instances, specifically says that if there's a dispute or a lawsuit, then the prevailing party is entitled to attorney fees. So I know our attorney fees are over $200,000. Not much, but over $200,000. We had two attorneys. The city had the city attorney and his assistant, plus two ICRIMP attorneys. That's basically the city's insurance company. So that's four attorneys. So, it would be safe to say that all of those fees added together are probably going to be more than $500,000. And the city was suing us for $150,000.
And that's with the 150 suit. Does the countersuit carry the same penalty, where the prevailing party gets attorney's fees covered?
Right.
And is that $200 from your side? Is that the defensive suit and the plaintiff suit? Where like so it was 200,000 for the 150 defense, where you're like, no, we didn't defraud you. Is that 200,000 accounting for the countersuit that you filed?
It's combined.
Gotcha. So combined legal fees between the two is $200,000 just on your side.
That's correct.
Wowzers. And the $150,000 lawsuit was determined by a judge. That wasn't a jury?
That was determined by the judge. And the interesting thing at the trial, I learned a lot, is that the jury was not privileged to the fact that the city first sued us. They just were privileged to the fact that we sued the city for the constitutional rights. So that was not discussed.
Gotcha.
And there was one other important thing during the trial that happened is that Councilwoman Russell was on the stand, and she testified that she hadn't done certain things. And we had it on tape from the city council meetings that she had, where she had admitted to doing those things. So there was a recess, and the jury was out of the room, and they played that video for her from the city archives. And she said, well, I guess I did say that. I didn't remember that. So, and then when the jury came back, they were not privy to that. So she was not convicted, which, is the jury's decision. But, it's interesting in court what's allowed and what's not allowed and what all the objections are. And,
and again, this kind of going into the weeds, but like, do you generally present evidence when the jury's out of the room? Well, that's what it sounds like, right?
No, you don't. But when the attorneys start discussing things with the judge, then the jury's out of the room. And that's what had happened. And out of those discussions, they
determined that the things had been said.
Yeah. And that was good for Helen Russell, but wasn't good for the seniors.
Right.
Because we feel like she violated our constitutional rights also.
Where does this go? Right. So like obviously the history of the building and the organization are great histories, right? The building was derived from donations and community support for the senior organization. It's my understanding, held in a pseudo trust by the city to be held on so that the senior organization had continuity with its locations and its services and its offerings. The organization still exists. It still exists. What is the future of this organization?
Well, that's a very good question. We had much of our equipment in storage, and we just emptied our storage locker, moved all of the equipment that we thought we could do without going forward into my shop. I have a motorhome garage, and it's big enough that we were able to get all the equipment in there. And this past weekend, we had a garage sale. So we sold much of the things that we'd accumulated over the past 30 years, decorations, table decorations, those kind of things. But we kept all of our tables and chairs and our piano and our pool table and office chairs, those kind of things. And those are in a smaller storage unit now that we're paying rent on. And we're keeping the corporation intact. We'll have monthly board meetings, and we'll have a monthly covered dish kind of potluck for the seniors at different locations. And in the meantime, before the court case, we were renting space at the Eagle Hills Church, and they were very good to us. I hit every possible location in Eagle when all of this was happening, trying to get space, and we couldn't find space, but the Eagle Hills Church was very cooperative. They charged us a lot of rent, but it's the only place we could get. And now that lease is up, so we had our last meeting there at the end of September the 30th. And we still owe them a little rent because with all of the fees that we were experiencing, we have some debt we have to clear up. But with the money that we paid up front to the attorneys as retainers, that will be coming back to us. Plus, we have about $80,000 coming from the IRS. So we'll be able to clear all of our debts and have some money left over. So we're going to stay intact, and we hope that with this appeal that the city's doing, that we will counter appeal and maybe have some other advantages, because we really didn't sue the city for any money at all. Maybe that was a hindsight, but they sued us for money, but we didn't countersue. So I tell people, well, we won the battle, but we probably lost the war because we don't have a building anymore. And in the meantime, I was reaching out to local developers in Eagle and people who had helped us in the past, and they voiced concerns that they were afraid because they were afraid of the city, because they have to work with the city going forward. And with the lawsuits against the Arts Commission and the senior citizens, Home Depot, and the Smith family, they were really nervous about helping, but I think they will going forward because we've had a lot of positive feedback from people. And I don't think the regular media has done a good job talking about the case, because they talk about the $2,000 fine and the $5,000 fine and the constitutional rights, but they don't talk about the court throwing out the $150,000 suit. So hopefully we'll get more support going forward. And, you know, the city did so many things when they kicked us out. They took our name. We're Eagle Senior Citizens, Inc., and we've been that way since Wayne Crosby and Penny Browich and other people. Those are the only two people still alive that were on the original fundraising committee. When they raised all the money for the city, they worked really hard, having auctions and raffles and nut feeds and all kinds of things to raise money. And they just never assumed that we had such a good working relationship. Steve Gerber was the mayor back then with the city.
Steve Gerber's coming on the show.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I have yet to meet the man. I'm very excited.
Yeah, he was the mayor back then, and he signed the first lease. And when the committee back then, the Eagle Community Building Association was their first name. And then after the building got built, they became a nonprofit, which we're that nonprofit now. Then they moved forward. And Steve, a lot of mayors signed a lease. Some we weren't happy with and some we were happy with. Steve Gerber was very involved back then. And when it was all said and done, we were about $40,000 short. So several citizens, I think 12 different citizens in Eagle, signed a personal note to borrow the money to finish the building. And then that money was raised and the building was paid off. The state, the federal government through the state, gave the senior citizens $100,000, but none of that money could be spent on the city hall part of the building. It was 5,000 square feet, 3,500 for the seniors and 1,500 for the city hall.
Gotcha.
And it was totally separate. 2 electric meters, 2 water meters, 2 everything.
Yeah, like a duplex.
Right.
There you go.
And then, the history's there for what happened going forward. But, Rick Izaguirre, Steve Gerber, Jim Reynolds, all of those previous mayors signed the lease agreement at different times for the senior citizens. And we were also allowed to rent the building out in the evening. So we had several churches. And then when I was on the city council, not when I was mayor, I was a liaison to the Senior Citizen Center. And I went back to the city and said, we have people who would like to have funerals and wakes and weddings here, but we can't serve alcohol. So we amended the lease so that you could get a permit if you wanted to do those things. The individuals could, and they could have alcohol served during their events.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I had no idea that the building itself functioned as like kind of an enterprise revenue generation mechanism for the senior organization. That makes a whole lot of sense, because then obviously that offsets the cost and dues of the memberships. It increases your offerings that you can provide, whatever those might be. But this was like a substantial asset, like an engine that was driving the senior organization forward.
Right. There was a clause in the original agreement that if the city needed to use the building something, they got priority. So that was always in the lease.
Sure.
And when they decided that they were going to kick us out, they said so many different things in public meetings. One was that seniors had come to them and said that they weren't offering the services that they needed. So rather than the city talking to us and asking if we could expand the services, they just said we can do it better. So they kicked us out. Now the city is paying a director for the senior center plus staff. They're paying all the utilities, and then they're paying for special events. They're having dinners and dances or whatever they want to have there at taxpayer expense, where before the seniors were paying for those things. And we had made a lot of money through transportation because initially we bought our own vans to deliver people. And then we got involved with Valley Regional Transit, and through the federal program, they were able to reimburse us for trips. We furnished the drivers, they trained them, and they insured them. They covered all the liability. Sure. And so that was very lucrative for the seniors. That's one of the reasons why we ended up with so much money that the city claimed we didn't have.
Gotcha.
And then the month before the city terminated our lease, the board and I went to VRT and talked to them about our program, and we were presented with a letter saying that they were terminating our long-term contract with them because the city said that if they continued to do business with the senior citizens, then they would not give Valley Regional Transit any more funding.
Wait, why did the city care? Why would they do that?
They were, in our opinion, they were trying to do everything they could to put us out of business, to bankrupt us and push us down the road so they could take over. So the city that year, I understand, and these figures might be a little wrong, gave them about $100,000, and they'd only been paying about $18,000 as a percentage to them over the years. And then as soon as that first year was over and they had canceled our contract, then they went back to the old amount. And they did the same thing with Meals on Wheels. That meeting that I talked about earlier with the city attorney and the director of Meals on Wheels was just a waste of time because the city attorney said that they were going to get a temporary restraining order to prevent us from moving any of our equipment out. And he also said that I had said, and it's not I have a recording, that we were going to take the kitchen equipment out. Well, we didn't own the kitchen equipment. The Meals on Wheels did. It was given to Meals on Wheels by the Department of Health and Social Services that used to run that program. So we really got beat up by two other nonprofits or state organizations that didn't help us at all. So we provided meals for our seniors out of our own money for 2 years while the Meals on Wheels went to the Eagle City Hall or the old senior center building and provided meals for them there. And I never went there for a meal, but a lot of our members would go there for exercise class, and they would see how many people were eating. And so I asked Meals on Wheels, or their funding organization, to give me numbers on how many meals they were serving. And we planted one of our members there every day for a month and tallied how many people were eating, and the numbers weren't even close. Somebody was giving misinformation to the accounting or the organization that funded Meals on Wheels.
Oh, so they were saying, like, we're serving 100 people a day. We need to be reimbursed for 100 people a day.
Right.
That's what the funding organization understood. But in practice, it was like, no, it's like 20 or 30 people per day.
Right. Plus Meals on Wheels had been telling us, and they even came to the Eagle Hills Church to look at the kitchen in the Eagle Hills Church. And it was actually a more modern, better kitchen than what was at the senior center. And the Meals on Wheels guy said he was concerned that church members would be using the kitchen, so he didn't want that to interfere with their use of the building. And so we felt like we were going to get to continue with the contract we had with them. So our seniors kept buying meal tickets from Meals on Wheels. And when they said they weren't going to serve us anymore, I think I was told that they would buy those tickets back. So I rather than the members going individually, I rounded up all the tickets that they had bought, and I personally reimbursed our members for those tickets. Then I went to the Meals on Wheels office, and I was told that there was no way they were going to reimburse us. So I have a drawer full of tickets that I bought personally that Meals on Wheels could reimburse us for because they got the money and we didn't get any services. So that's really a shame that they've done that.
So,
I mean, Matt, the story goes on and on.
It's,
I'm going to give you a headache.
yeah, it's just one of those things where, like, I don't know why things happen the way they do. I'm constantly learning things, both on the local and state level, where it's like, oh, my head hurt. Like, why is this happening? But ultimately, what I come back to is like, okay, where do you go forward, right? How do you keep plugging along and providing things? So, like, what does that look like for you guys? Is there talk of, another fundraising push to, provide another piece of real estate that, will be theoretically held in trust? Probably not with the city of Eagle, but with anybody. Because I mean, honest, at the end of the day, we have Eagle residents that need this service. We have an organization that, again, private organizations, more government. I was with somebody this morning and I asked him a question and he's like, listen, I don't know the answer, but more government is not the answer. It's like, okay, that's fine. Yeah. I don't mind at all. But if the idea is, hey, look, we have a private organization, a nonprofit that doesn't cost the taxpayer anything, that's going to solve these problems, that seems like a pretty good deal for, an average Idahoan taxpayer. It's like, okay, great. Like, let the private, this is what people always argue. Stop having government try to fix things and let, private, either religious groups or organizations, nonprofits get after it and resolve these problems for the community. So, like, how is that working out? How is that going to work out with you guys? Are you going to continue, try to rebuild the organization? Are you going to try to rebuild, the community collaborations and assets? What do you think the plan is?
Well, that's our goal. We don't know what will happen with the next court case or the appeal, but our plan has always been going forward to find a building or have a building built. And the only way we can do that is through fundraising or to get some large foundation to help us get something going. There's, Idaho has some great foundations out there that we haven't tapped yet because we never knew what was going to happen to us going forward. So we will do that, even if we have to hire a professional fundraiser to help us get those things going. The thing about seniors.
May I ask one quick question?
Sure.
And I'm very sorry to interrupt. The senior center building, again, as we're talking about fundraisers and collaboration, the senior center building, that is now owned wholly by the city. Like, this has become an asset on their asset sheet, whereas before it was held in trust for an organization for that organization's utility, in part initially and then in whole later on. Now it is 100%, like you said, it's a 5,000 square foot building.
Yes.
Now that 5,000 square feet, let's say at $200 a square foot plus land, that's like a $1 million plus asset that was originally built and funded by the community for seniors that now the city of Eagle just owns completely and can do whatever it likes.
Right. And the history on that is the Dr. House and his wife donated some land to the city and the city purchased some land, and it's all part of where the senior building is sitting. But the donation part of that from Dr. House and his wife was that the city had 15 years to build a city hall or the land would revert back to the House family. And about 3 years before that 15 years ran out is when the building was built. So the fundraising done by Wayne Crosby and Penny Browich and all the other members of the committee who have passed away actually saved the city's bacon on that, because they got a building built that they would probably have lost that property.
Gotcha.
So it's just more history.
So, and again, I'm sorry I interrupted you. So again, fundraising, organizing, finding a place, and finding, partnerships and other organizations or grant mechanisms that you could potentially tap into that you were waiting to engage until you understood the outcome of the lawsuit.
That's correct. And we're using some homeowners associations clubhouses right now to play pinochle and do other things. So we still have things going. But Matt, the interesting thing about senior citizens, and I got involved with seniors because of my mom years ago. I lived in Juneau, and she'd come up to visit us, and the kids were in school and we were working, so she started going to the senior center. And it really, she was from Alabama, and she was in Alaska, and she formed friendships with people and corresponded with them till the day she died. So when I moved here, I got involved with the senior center, and before I ran for city council. And so I was really involved with it here. And part of the issue is leadership for the seniors. Many seniors, the majority of our members are widows. Men die young. And they're so lonely. Many of them can't drive anymore. They live in an assisted living, or some have their own apartments, and they need community involvement. They need to engage with people. So that's what we were really working on with seniors, plus their needs, making sure that their Social Security benefits are up to date, and supporting them in other ways, blood drives and those kind of things. So we worked really hard, and there are other medical issues that seniors really need to address, but the biggest thing is loneliness, and we provided that for them. And I classify seniors in two different groups. There's the 55, 60 to say 70-year-olds who are still very active in the community and drive and still go skiing and ride bicycles and do things like my wife. And then there are people who are older that have become widowed or don't have a partner or can't drive anymore. That group of senior citizens need more supportive services. And the city would lead you to believe that we weren't serving people from that 55 to 70-year-old range, but they were pretty much active themselves. My wife and I belong to the Bogus Basin Ski Club, and I swear most of the members are 55 or older. We even have some 90-year-olds skiing. So there's different needs for seniors.
Sure. And
that's what we felt like we were providing for them. It's been real hard on many of our seniors. Even our last day at the church, we had a pretty good turnout. When we left the church, we had a big turnout that day, and the seniors voted to have a potluck. And a potluck, or covered dish, as you called them when I grew up in the South, they have to bring the food. So we're going to have those once a month at different locations. And we're going to have board meetings at our board members' homes once a month, just to keep things going, keep our organization active. So, another thing that happened when the city kicked us out, they started using our name, Eagle Senior Center, and we were Eagle Senior Citizens, Inc., DBA, Eagle Senior Center. We'd always been known as a senior center. And lo and behold, they were using our name and other things, and they created a website. And the website was the food line at one of the meetings going forward. And they had my wife in that food line, and she hasn't been back in that building since we were kicked out. So they were using the pictures.
Their own likeness, yeah.
Right. So, they were ruthless in what they did to us.
So the fundraising attempts then, it sounds like now that you're engaged in an appeals process, there is going to be another further delay. But once that is resolved one way or another, it seems like that you will engage in more formalized fundraising efforts and, perhaps engaging the community or other organizations with the intent of, kind of building it back up to its former glory.
Right, right. That's our goal. And it'll be a long, hard road because Meals on Wheels and Valley Regional Transit has basically abandoned us. And it's so surprising because Valley Regional Transit gets a lot of federal money to provide services to seniors. And even though they say they still provide services to them, we've had incidences in the winter when it's freezing that they would pick up our members. You call in, you give a time, and they pick you up, and then they drop you off, and then they come back and get you. So one of our members was dropped off at a medical appointment an hour early in freezing weather and was told they'd just have to wait there. So they waited outside. And then we have other members that call in, and they'll say, well, we can pick you up and take you to your medical appointment, but we can't pick you up from the medical appointment and take you home. So the service has been very haphazardly run, and we kept complaint sheets for weeks and weeks and turned those into Valley Regional Transit, and they didn't do anything to help us, and they're doing that now. And we just paid them a couple of $1,000s to provide an evening service for our seniors who like to go out to dinner once a week. So we had to pay them extra to do that. And so they haven't been very nice to us, and it's very shocking that that organization has a board that's made up of elected officials from around the city. And we were told by them once that the insurance company, their insurance company, which is ICRIMP, said that they would cancel their insurance if they kept their contract with the Eagle Senior Citizens. So they told us in the board meeting that they were going to have to cancel all the contracts, but they still provide services to CUNA and some of the other areas, just the way they did with us in the past.
Oh, so the relationship, paradigm is not different. Like, you weren't unique in providing your own buses and then furnishing drivers and having them train them, and then you guys operate the bus and get paid through the federal government. That's not a unique mechanism. That's also replicated in CUNA with other senior people or other places throughout the Treasure Valley.
Right. And we were told the few weeks before they canceled our contract that our program was a shining star and they were going to duplicate that with other programs. And they did. But then they cut us off.
Well, Stan, I really appreciate you coming in to explain this. It is really distressing to see. I was talking to Bill Roscoe from Boise Rescue Mission a few months back, and he was talking about the emerging trend of elderly homeless that never had problems with drugs or alcohol. They never had problems with employment. They just outlived their capacity to pay for themselves. Right. And with the rising cost of living in the Treasure Valley, it's like, yeah, man, you go downtown, try to get a sandwich. It's like $13 for a sandwich. I can't afford that. Like, I make my own sandwiches now. But the point is that it is a concern. It is a concern of mine, especially hearing that from Bill Roscoe, and he's boots on the ground, right? He's engaged and dealing with people that are older that just can't change with the times. And, again, that's why I wanted to hear from you specifically, like, look, what can be done? What is happening and what's the plan? So I really appreciate you coming in and sharing this. I would also like to stay in touch with you as you guys get through, again, close the loop with the appeals process, both your appeal, if you do file one, and the city's appeal, and start helping people understand, okay, now that that's behind us, what's the plan moving forward? Because I have not, no matter what I've heard from whoever I've talked to regarding what happened in Eagle, nobody ever said that Eagle was worse off for having a senior center. Nobody ever said they were worse off for having a nonprofit organization that was, took up the mantle and took care of this portion of the population, independent of city government. Like, nobody ever complained about that. So it seems like a pretty good thing if it can be restored.
Correct. And I would like to just add that, without mentioning names, we do have an election coming up in Eagle, and elections are so important. Just this whole thing that happened with the seniors, is done by elected officials. So I would encourage people to look at people's history, people's tenure in the town, what they're saying, why they're running. You've had 2 people on your podcast that right from the beginning, they said, "I don't know why I'm running." So if you don't know why you're running, why are you running?
Yeah.
And we've had some good elected officials in Eagle, and we need to ask questions of those officials. And SOS Eagle, an organization that's another nonprofit that I'm a part of, and there's a lot of members. We get blamed for being a partisan organization, but most of our initial board it was about a 50-50 mix of Republicans and Democrats. But I would encourage people to ask questions to their elected people running for office, and put pressure on elected officials to do the right thing. We don't need to be hassling our especially our senior citizens and youth. Most people in their working years can defend for themselves, but both youth and seniors need community support.
Yeah.
So,
well, thank you for what you're doing for the seniors, Stan. Thank you for coming in today, and let's make sure we stay connected.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.